Hello, I'd like to continue with John verse 14. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. So Jesus wasn't really interested in becoming an earthly ruler, because as he said in front of Pilate that his kingdom wasn't of this world. He is the king of the universe. Yet he came down to earth. He emptied himself. He became a human and he died as a sinner so that I might be righteous in front of God. So when Jesus died, the Father saw me, and when I will die, he will see Jesus, so that I might be righteous. I was reading this book the other day. The guy was talking about why was it so terrible for Jesus to die on the cross. Because they say that his death was the worst death ever. And the guy was thinking, and it took him a while to realize. He said that because there have been people who suffered greatly in history, but you see, the problem with the crucifixion was it was such a horrible way to die that it was outlawed by the Romans. They weren't allowed to perform it on Roman citizens because it was such a horrible way to die. But one of the key indicators that it was worse for Jesus than it would otherwise have been was he had to suffer the wrath of God for every single sin ever committed and that will be committed by humans everywhere. And that's a lot of wrath. And the wrath of an infinite being with unlimited power has to be terrible, has to be terrifying. Even when he was in a garden, he didn't want to. He was praying that if it was possible, his human nature got the better of him. If it was possible that he could somehow not suffer the wrath of God. And the other thing is, first time ever in history, and the only time in history, he was separated from his father. And that was the other reason why it was such a horrible ordeal for Christ. But verse 16 continues like that. When evening came, his disciples went down to the lake, where they got into a boat and set off across the lake for Capernaum. By now it was dark, and Jesus had not yet joined them. A strong wind was blowing, and the waters grew rough. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat, walking on the water, and they were frightened. But he said to them, "It is I, don't be afraid." Then they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were heading. Before I continue, I'd like to read Matthew's version of it, because he approaches it from a different perspective. He says that in Matthew's account, the disciples saw Jesus walk in the water and they were terrified. And sorry, I can't read it. It's in Hungarian. I have to tell you what happened. So Matthew puts it in a different perspective, because when Jesus came, Peter taught him that if it was him, that to tell him, he said that, "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water." And he said, "Come." So Peter was walking to Jesus in the water, but he saw the waves and he saw the wind, and what happened was he started sinking, and he cried out, "Lord, Lord, save me." And Jesus extended his arm and grabbed him and told him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt me?" Then they got into the boat and the wind died down immediately. And those in the boat bowed down before him and told him that you really are the Son of God. Now, the interesting thing is that the word is used when Jesus walks, they call it the the godly I am, ego eimi. And ego eimi is the same word as Yahweh, I am, the big I am, or God or Jehovah. So many times, well, a number of times Jesus identified himself as ego eimi, I am. And here he does it as well. He did it a couple of times. But the most important thing I think to remember is, and it's easier to understand if we take Matthew's account into consideration, that Matthew saw Jesus. He had courage. He mustered courage to be able to step onto the water, come out of the boat and start walking on the water. You see, until he had his eyes on Jesus, everything was fine. But the moment he started paying attention to what was going on around him, in that it's not even that you're not aware of your surroundings, it's more like that they can influence you, and he became scared of the waves, of the wind, and started sinking. And what we have to take away from this is when the wind and the wave comes, the wind and the waves come, or the winds and the waves come, you must not take your eyes off of Jesus. You can be aware of what's going on around you, but you shouldn't let it, and I shouldn't let it influence me. We shouldn't let it scare us. We should just keep our eyes on the Lord, and it should give us the strength to be able to carry on walking on the water. But and it will happen, it has happened, it will happen, that if we take our eyes off of Christ and we start sinking, all we have to do is cry out to him to save us, and he will come and extend his arm and save us. So whenever you are in a horrible situation, whenever you feel like you're sinking, just call out to Christ and he will come and rescue you. Amen.